So now I would like to welcome Sabine Odfjell from Harnham to the stage. Welcome, Sabine. So Sabine is a senior recruiter consultant specialized in data science in the Nordics. And today she's going to talk about diversity, the importance of it, and what it is. So welcome, Sabine.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for being here today. It's been a really good event so far. I've really enjoyed listening to all the other speeches. I'm old-fashioned like Dasil. I have my paper just in case I lose my way, which does tend to happen. I ramble, I'm a recruiter, it's my personality. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed Fika and that you're enjoying the snacks before we kick off again. So we were actually recommended to start off our presentations with a story, which for me, that suits my agenda really well, because it's a story that I wanted to put in my presentation, but I couldn't make it fit anywhere. So I was like, perfect, I have my icebreaker. So my story is actually from the beginning of my recruitment career, and it's my first experience noticing sexism within the working culture. And to give you some background information, I started recruiting about 2 years ago within the Swedish space and the Norwegian space. And I just completed one of my first pitches to a very well-known Swedish business. It had gone very well, and I felt like we'd come to an agreement, and we were ready to start the project the day after. So I went to my management, told them the deal, and how well everything had gone, and was ready to start headhunting data scientists for this business. Cue the next day, I get a phone call from the recruitment director from this company, and she didn't sound very excited anymore, and I was very surprised. However, it became clear. She told me, oh, actually, we're not going to be working with you after all. And I was like, why? What's going on? What changed? We agreed everything. And she said, well, I went to my management and told them about the agreement. And to quote her exact reason, her management was very traditional, and they didn't feel comfortable having a female of my age heading up this project. So at the time, I was keen on getting the sale still, so I started selling back. And I was like, you don't understand. I have old men in my team too. There are also capable people. It's not just me. I'm not the face of the business. I just picked up this call. And then after a while, I was like, you know what, this is a lost cause. If they don't want to work with women, if they don't want to work with young people, then maybe we just shouldn't be working together in general. So for those of you who don't know who I am, probably a lot of you to be fair, you might be like, what's she talking about? Well, I am a recruiter, so I do work with candidates looking for roles in data science, and I work on behalf of organizations in the Nordics who are looking for that type of talent. So it puts me in a position to talk a lot about diversity, and to give you some background information about me before we kind of carry on, I don't have a quantitative mind or a quantitative background, but I do realize the importance of data and data analytics, and it's something I realized really early on in my degree, and I think I can relate to Rafi in the sense that my management degree wasn't necessarily getting me very far, but I still managed to land myself a job in data and analytics, and on a daily basis, I speak to hundreds, or not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis, I speak to hundreds of data scientists, and I learn a lot about what they're doing to change my life and all of our lives. So at any given time, I know how fertile I am, or when the next train is coming. I know that's not the biggest AI thing, but I can still see how the work of data scientists is impacting my life, and that's why diversity is a really important topic to me. So, what is diversity? I think for all of us in this room, it's quite easy to assume that I'd like to talk just about gender diversity, but diversity is actually so much more. So, a truly diverse workplace has diversity in age, gender, ethnicity, religion, and the list does go on. It truly is a really large scope. It's not just, are you a male or are you a female? So out of curiosity, who in this room feels like they work in a diverse workplace? Good, okay, so not too bad. And out of everyone here, who's working for an audience that is diverse? Not that many. Okay, that's fair. The reason I ask is because in this forum, I'd imagine that we are the forward thinkers of diversity. But to set the tone of this presentation a little bit, that's not the case for the rest of the working community. So I would expect those of us in here today to be like forward thinkers and be the most diverse out of all of us because we've come here today. But what we've seen from analysis, what Harnham has researched a lot about, is that actually data and analytics as a community is not a very diverse community. And that's something that I hope we're all going to be inspired to try and improve moving forward. So why is it even important besides fulfilling a moral quota? Well, studies have actually shown that 86% of workers prefer multi-generational teams. That means that even if we think it sounds fun to have 25-year-old colleagues across the board, we actually tend to enjoy having people within our team that represent all different age groups. 85% of workers think that a diverse age range creates more innovative solutions. So I think myself being part of this young culture, there is this attitude that we're the future, we have all the good ideas. Actually, it's shown, it's proven that more innovative solutions happen when we have a good age range in our groups. So, of course, these are just opinions on what people prefer, but actually, it's not just beliefs. Studies have shown that diverse workforces financially tend to outperform less diverse workforces. So it is important not just to keep your workers happy, but also because it just actually makes you a better company and makes you perform better. So diversity is about drawing knowledge from as many knowledge sources as possible. And 78% of hiring managers believe a diverse workforce improves culture, and 62% of hiring managers believe it boosts company performance. So what actually happens when we're not diverse? Well, since diversity is about drawing knowledge and, I guess, targeting a diverse audience, we most often see the impact of non-diverse teams in marketing campaigns. So just for fun, I've brought along some of the examples that I came across when I was gathering information for this presentation. And this is one example of something that has happened when there was not a diverse marketing funnel or a product development funnel. So for most women in this room, it's kind of obvious why this is a little bit of a ridiculous pool toy. I mean, to me, the first thing I see when I look at it is a sanitary towel. And I don't think a lot of women would have been there and said, oh, yes, let's produce this, let's take it to market. Because everyone wants to float around on a sanitary towel. Clearly, this was made by men. Now, this next one was a little bit more vague in terms of why it got so much backlash in the media. But the connotations and the impressions that people got from seeing this ad campaign were that it came across as really racist. And I think that probably could have been avoided if there was a broader ethnic team working on the ad campaign. This one as well, it's not as, I guess that one's pretty obvious. It just doesn't look good at all. And the impact of this isn't harming anyone. It's not hurting me or you or probably anyone, but it is just a mistake that shouldn't really be happening and could have so easily been avoided if there was a diverse team working on this particular project, or just, I don't even know if diversity is necessary for this one. It's just so bad. But I think you're all probably sitting there and thinking, right, these are bad, but how does it really impact data science or data and analytics at all? And I guess the reason I brought those images in the first place was because if this is happening in such an obvious function, what could happen when we are trusting and embedding non-diverse, I guess, perceptions into algorithms and machine learning? So let's talk a little bit about data science. Now, I'm not a data scientist, so this isn't technical at all, but it is a function which is led by stats and numbers. And I think a lot of people tend to feel like, exactly, that's why we don't need a diverse team, because it's just numbers, it's just statistics. But there are people who are manually responsible for making decisions on the variables which go into the algorithms. And if you have 5 people from the exact same background with the exact same perceptions and the exact same thoughts, they're probably not going to be able to avoid the same types of cognitive biases as if they were more diverse. And it sounds obvious, but it's not obvious. And a lot of these data teams are still, unfortunately, very male dominant. So I suppose the takeaway that I'm trying to come across it with is that diversity matters in all aspects of your business, all the way from marketing operations to HR to data science. Consumers are going to judge your efforts across all formats, and to be able to sell effectively, you're going to need to be able to represent a more diverse audience within the product teams. So I think I've spent a lot of time now talking about why diversity is important, but I haven't necessarily talked too much about the state of diversity, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. So to give you some background information, Harnham does quite a lot of research on diversity in data science, data and analytics. I've not done this analysis because once again, I'm not technical. So I've had a lot of help with this part. And we're going to look into the different characteristics contributing to diversity. So mainly age and gender today, because that's the most insights we can provide you with. We are looking into things like religion and ethnicity, but it's not something I have just yet. So I want to take a step away from data science, first of all, and look at the state of gender diversity across the entire working population, because I think it'll set the scene a little bit. So this is the entire working population. We have a 47% female and a 53% male split. That's not that bad. That's quite good, actually. I think as a population, we do probably strive to be a 50-50, but this isn't like bad, to be honest. But this, bear in mind, is every single category of job. So anything from firemen to CEO. So what we've done now is we've looked more into the data and analytics community through surveys and through staffing industry analysis. And this is the state of data and analytics. So we are only a 25% female community. And I suppose that's not very good on its own. But one stat that alarmed me was that actually 13% of all data teams have 0 women. And that's quite alarming too. And I don't necessarily think that this paints the picture for all of the people in this room, because as mentioned, I think perhaps we are the forward-thinking people in the industry. But this is a bit alarming, because this is kind of more a global entirety of the state of data and analytics. So zooming in even further to look at data science, we are an 18% female community. That's quite concerning. We are actually the worst market within data and analytics. We do team with the data engineers in terms of how bad we are at being diverse. But it is obviously not the best statistic. So yeah, that's kind of it about gender diversity. Later on, I'm going to talk about how we can potentially try and increase that. But I did want to talk about one other characteristic. And it's one that is really, I guess, heavily discriminated against, at least from my perspective as a recruiter. And it is the age diversity across data and analytics. So as you can see, 49% of the working population within data and analytics is between 25 and 34 years old. That's probably indicative of the fact that we are an industry which is in its relative industry, but it's still alarming because there are only 11.5% which are above 45 in this industry. And looking back to what we were saying about having a diverse age range within working teams, it's not really conducive of a good working environment. So, and I guess an anecdote from my time as a recruiter is that the attitude towards hiring is a little bit negative towards certain age groups, whether that be younger or older. It depends on the role. But I've had very many hiring managers actually specifically request that someone is older or younger than the previous candidate that they met. And it's not a metric that we as an agency can listen to. I literally won't ask people how old they are. But I encourage my clients and the community in general to try to stop using age as a metric which is going to make you qualified or not qualified for a job. So that was pretty dark and dyster. I think that I've said not very positive things about the general diversity right now, and I wanted to end my presentation with a bit more of a lighthearted thing about how we can improve diversity. I know that there are so many campaigns in place for getting younger females to get into science early on, which is fantastic because data science and data and analytics is a community which is led by science. So those are fantastic campaigns, but they won't necessarily have an impact straight away. Perhaps in 15 to 20 years, when these younger females and boys go through these programs, we'll see the impact. But what can you, maybe yourself, be doing right now to improve diversity? So you can stop enforcing old perceptions. So how to do that? There are a few different ways. I think someone actually in the panel spoke of it earlier. Something that I would recommend doing is blinding, kind of revealing things in CVs which can make you guess what gender or age the person is. I think in Scandinavia particularly, we have a very sharing culture, which means that when you write your CV, you put your date of birth, wife and mother of two, and everything like this. And I mean, it's fantastic to share that information. But because we are humans, we are prejudiced by accident. It's not because we're trying to be, but we just are. So by hiding or withholding that information, at least in the CV evaluation stage, we avoid making decisions on those types of characteristics, and we judge a CV based on its merit, which I think is very good. The next one's a bit more, I guess, different. It's about stating parental leaves clearly from the onset. And the reason I'm recommending this is because during Harnham's research on diversity, it became increasingly obvious that a lot of women actually refrain from applying to jobs because they're worried about the employer getting concerned that, oh, is she going to get pregnant, or things like that. So asking about parental leave is kind of a taboo, at least in other countries. It's quite difficult to handle that situation. So by sharing, as an employer, those types of benefits on the onset, even if it's in the job description, you avoid the situation where someone feels uncomfortable and has to ask it, and it actually will probably increase the amount of women that apply to your jobs. I think someone mentioned the post on LinkedIn, and it did spark my memory, and I hadn't included it in my presentation. But there are certain ways to write your job descriptions which are less masculine and does tend to encourage women to apply if you're trying to increase the population of women in your workplace. So it's something I can talk about later, but since someone else mentioned it, I thought it was a good idea. I need to say it. Another thing is that you should really be striving to have a diverse interview panel. Your interview panel is the candidate's window into your company. And if I'm a 33-year-old data scientist and I happen to be a female, if I only interview 3 senior men in the business, it's giving me an implication that actually you're not a very diverse company. And even if that is the case, that needs to be addressed early on. Because you're going to leave the interview with the impression that I'm going to be the only female. And that's not something that a lot of people find very exciting. And lastly, my recommendation is to 100% consider international applicants where possible. I heard Scania do that earlier on today. It's already a very talent-short community that you're recruiting into. So if you're serious about being a diverse employer, it's really important that you don't close yourself off to the rest of the world and the majority of the rest of the population. So consider international applicants. You will see value in having internal mobility teams which help fly over and relocate the right people. And yeah, does anyone have any questions? Can see you.
Questions?
Hey, as a recruiter, you probably see you obviously bring in a lot of people, but you also see why women are leaving companies. And I think how to keep women is as interesting as how to get them in. What would you say is the most common reason that women leave the data area, and how can companies avoid that?
Sure. So just one caveat is I rarely help people kind of leave the data area because I only recruit into data. So the most common reason that I find people leave anywhere is because they're not fostering their personal growth. It's very rarely related to whether the workplace is diverse or not. Perhaps sometimes people have unique, uncomfortable experiences at work, which can contribute to them leading. But across all of data science, I would say the most common reason for wanting to leave is trying to learn more. So I guess a big part of employer branding and a part of retention of key employees is that you need to feed into their hunger to learn. It's something that's innate with all data scientists and probably all data professionals. So as soon as someone feels they're not challenged and that they're not learning anymore, that's when they suddenly start answering recruiters.
Good point. So we have more questions, and we have time. So.
Yes, thank you so much. Very interesting presentation. I was just curious about the basics for the data of the statistics.
Sure. So that was the scary question, because we've had analysts do most of the actual research. To give you some background information, we do an annual salary guide. That involves us surveying candidates and clients alike. So we have around 1,000 contributors to each market that we recruit into, and on top of that we hire external staffing industry analysts to kind of balance out any kind of weird findings that we might have from, I guess, not having a very diverse audience. So I'd love to tell you more about the actual findings in the salary guide, and we can certainly talk about it, or I can tell you who to talk to at Harnham about the actual data, but I'm more of a talker than a doer with the data. Yeah, that's a unicorn, and that's kind of what I was trying to talk about as well. I think I skipped a bullet point because bullet points kill people. But there's one thing that I want to encourage everyone to do. It's because data science and data and analytics is such a buzzword right now. There are plenty of people who want to become a data analyst or data scientists. Now, as a recruiter, I talk to countless people who may have had very different backgrounds. Perhaps you were an accountant, or perhaps you were doing, maybe you're an analyst and you want to become a data scientist. And these people invest so much of their time into upskilling, and then they find it really difficult to enter those markets because they have a unique background. And that's where, reading a CV comes in, and where the hiring manager has the final say. But I'd encourage you, if you're trying to increase your diversity, to increase the backgrounds of the people you're considering. Don't think, oh, he doesn't have 5 years as a specifically data scientist. that doesn't mean that you're not a good data scientist right now, because clearly you've been doing other things and working on it. So, don't skip the first interview just because you see something weird in a CV. That's kind of my advice.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Anna. I'm a data scientist, and I have two questions actually for you. The first one is, as a data scientist, it's a continual learning process. You never can stop learning your own profession, not only like in everyday wise, but just like new technologies coming every day. It's like the amount of data is overflow us. But at the same time, when I were going through the recruitment process, I noticed that some of the headhunters was asking me very strange questions about technology. So my question is about Harnham. How do you keep up with the knowledge as a headhunter, how to sort what candidate is better and what candidate is not suits when you actually just learning about this
Sure.
through other ways?
Sure. That's a really good question. So actually, at the beginning of my career as a recruiter, I was taught which kind of things you were definitely going to see in a data scientist. Things like quantitative skills, machine learning, and programming languages. Now, what I've seen in my years as a recruiter is that those technologies consistently change all of the time. Every single company may have like slight different needs on their tooling. So how I evaluate a candidate's fit to a role is, first of all, based on their personality, and are they able to pick up the business problems that the company I'm recruiting for need to solve. So I think that, yes, programming languages are super important, and they're your data science tools. They're going to enable you to do really great analysis, but it's not the first thing I look for necessarily. It's kind of the softer skills that I need to reveal, because I can see your tools on a CV, and I need to ask you how you're using them and what for. But just because you are the best programmer in Python in the entire world doesn't actually mean that you're good for the particular role that I'm recruiting for. So actually, I'm an intermediary to find out what the business is trying to do, and I need to explain that well enough to a data scientist so that they can tell me if they think that's something that they want to do.
Thank you. And the second question was, you were talking about CV, how to write the CV, so it will be less like revealing the personal information about the candidate. But don't you think so? If even the company is choosing you and you're coming to the interview, the fact that you're a woman, black or white, talking with accent or without,
Of course.
small, big, different size, pregnant, not pregnant, will actually affect their the decision. So basically, if you will not reveal this in the CV level, you will just spend another extra hour of your time coming to the interview that will not lead you to anything.
I mean, of course, because we are humans, we're going to have those, we're going to make decisions on how people perform in interviews, and there are some cognitive biases that help us make our decisions in the end. But my encouragement is more at a CV review level, so you need to invite those people to an interview to find out more about them, and then hopefully during that interview process, you'll learn if they're going to be a fit or not. But what we see is that we send a CV, someone sees something they don't like in the CV, and it ends there. However, if they would have had that meeting, it's quite likely that actually it would have been a success in the end.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, more questions?
Thank you. Hi, I was just wondering from which country the data came from.
Sure. So we ran the surveys across all of Europe. We do actually have more like Scandinavia-specific analysis as well. And we have a separate survey which goes across the United States. So we use all of the data to look at the kind of global split. So I should have probably prefaced that actually some of this data isn't too reflective of like Southeast Asia.
Do we have one last question? Which one to
sped through.
pick? We have a couple here.
Do you think that women are shy or like don't bring out some certain skills that we could be better and louder expressing?
Absolutely.
And which are
No,
them?
everyone's not shy, but women, we're very self-critical. So what we see is that when we read a job description, there may be 10 things that you're looking for. And as a female, I think all of us, or a lot of us, are very quick to be like, oh, I can only do 7 out of those. I'm not going to apply. So we don't put ourselves out there. But a man, he reads it. Not everyone, of course. I can't speak on behalf of everyone. But they read it. They say 3 things that they can do. And they're like, awesome. I can do that job. And they apply and they put themselves out there. So I think as females, we can be more confident in our ability to do jobs that maybe we feel a little bit unsure about. But that's not for that's just in general what we see with applicants.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
I just want to add that I work as a project manager in recruitment for digital and data scientists and a lot of other. And I don't work like that at all. So I do a lot of testings. And actually, what I see in the work I've been doing is that the competences are really important and not how you look or who you are. So I just, you know, because one can get the general idea that this is how it works in the data scientist world. And I do not share that picture at all.
Okay. Yeah, so I should probably clarify that, of course, we do need to find those skills. We can't just send, like, anyone to a job. But what we find from our talks is that it's not just about can you do these hard skills. There are many other contributing factors. So if I'm already on the phone with someone that I know is a data scientist, then it's more about what they'd like to do and whether they can do the job that they're up for.
I think maybe what I'm thinking is that the recruiters, we also need to help change the future. So if we can provide with other, how should I say it, ways of making the decision, then we should do that. We need to teach.
Absolutely.
The clients.
Yes. Yes, so thank you so much. Very interesting.